Good afternoon and welcome to the Decorative Arts Center of Ohio. This is our Christmas display for 2025. My wife Jeannie and I have been decorating here for 25 years, so our title this year is a Silver Celebration. Some of you may see things that you've seen from past videos that we have online, and as we go through, we'll be pointing out probably some new things that haven't been on display before. So enjoy. We're currently in the hallway of this 1840s mansion, and on one of the marble top stands we have a Hanukkah display. This menorah is from sometime between 1930 and 1950, and a few other items, and Hanukkah this year begins on Sunday evening, the 14th of December. On the marble top stand opposite of the Hanukkah display is an angel display. On the tree, we have plastic angels made in Germany in the early 1950s. Down below, we have, again, some German angels. These are paper mache. These date probably from the 1930s. And a candle holder made of plastic with the German angels on it, and a sleigh with angels in it also. Behind there is images of angels. They're Renaissance era paintings. These are paper copies of them. This piece is a homemade angel. The homemade part will come in just a moment. If you look at it and say, well, this is a bisque doll's head, which it is, in German and made in Germany. This is its arms that have been, they're on a joint, but they've been glued together so that they are permanently in this widespread form. And we see the feet of the doll down there, but that's where the concept stops, because at some point in time, this German doll was probably broken. Her body is no longer there, and neither are her legs, but underneath, she has a log. So the head, the arms, and the feet are all mounted on this log. Probably done by a father. This is maybe the christening gown of the little girl that owned the doll. And he's added into the back of the log these very simple wings to turn her into a Christmas angel. This antique feather tree is set up, decorated with cookies and candy. The display at the Decorative Arts Center of Ohio upstairs is on food and cooking, and downstairs they have a wonderful display of old cookbooks. So once again, like we have done in the past, we've tried to tie in some of our Christmas decorations with that. In the center of the dresser is a collection of cookie cutters and cookie molds, a cookbook on how to work with Christmas molds and cookies. This tree is all done with fruits and vegetables, and time period anywhere from the 1920s up to the 2020s are the decorations on this particular tree. We have some mannequins dressed in children's clothing from the 1950s, 1960s vintage clothing. The boy wrapped up in his snowsuit here is ready to go sledding on a 1950s sled, kind that I was used to as a child. The girl is going to ride the saucer sled, which some of you would remember. This one actually is a flexible flyer, which made many of this type of sleds, and it's made out of steel, not aluminum. I didn't particularly like the saucer sleds because you had no control. It would spin and turn, and if you were headed toward a tree, you might as well just bail out. Then behind me is a large wreath on the main entry door when the house was in use and not a museum. And Santa is a 1940s, 1950s Santa head. Down in this corner of the hallway, we have another child in a vintage outfit pushing a toy wicker baby carriage with a small baby inside. The Santa is from the Hocking County Historical Society in Logan, Ohio, which is my hometown. We did a display for them earlier this year on Halloween, And as we were taking it down, she said, "We've got an old Santa out in storage. Would you like to use it for your Christmas display?" And I said, "Sure." This Santa came from the Eberfel's department store in Logan, Ohio, which is no longer there. And it was on display in the late 60s up until I think maybe the late 70s. It's mechanical. He's kind of old right now. He doesn't really want to turn, but mechanic-wise, he would turn at the waist and he would wave his hand. Just kind of a wonderful piece. And like I say, it's on loan from the Hocking County Historical Society. On the couch, we have a couple of dolls in vintage clothing. This one from maybe the late 30s, early 40s. Jeanne and I have found that if we take some of these dolls from the 1960s that were life-size, that we can dress them in vintage clothes, and they would really look, pretty nice. And along with the dolls, we have a couple of books that would have been from the storybook Christmas time period. And then we have an elf on the shelf over here with this particular doll, surrounded by several elves. And one of the things that we've done, like in the book itself, is we've placed elves in different places in all 4 rooms here, so that as children come through, and even adults, can kind of look and see if they can find all the elves that have been placed around. And every once in a while, we move them. The other piece, we have a 1940s Merry Christmas banner that could have laid on the back of a couch or a chair. Could have been used on top of a table. And this one is particularly interesting to me. It's a Victorian piece, probably from the 1880s, 1890s. But I particularly like the fact that they have used perspective very dramatically to highlight a nativity piece that's in the center. Most of the rest of it is all done with gilded paper and silvered papers. And over on this chair is another child in a vintage outfit from the 1990s. It's actually one of my children's outfits with another one of the books from Storyland. We're in the rear parlor of the house, and I have a small display of antique lighting here that I'd like to talk a little bit about. The first type of lighting that we find on a Christmas tree dating back to the 1500s is the use of candles. And the first types of candles just really had a little bit of wire wrapped around the bottom of them, and then it was wired onto the tree. And later, or even maybe earlier, they would light a candle, put melted wax onto the tree branch, and while it was still hot, put the candle in it. All those were kind of dangerous. So candle clips were invented, and they helped catch some of the wax that was on the bottom, a little pan like this. But if any of you put candles on your trees just for decorations, you know that they have a tendency to tilt and look all sorts of ways other than straight up and down. In 1864, a man named Kirchhoff developed this particular candle holder, which is a pendulum weight at the bottom of the candle holder. It has the advantage of keeping that candle upright no matter what happens to the tree branch. As I move my finger around, you can see that the weight has a tendency to keep this candle upright. Other inventions of the time period were a pendulum weighted one with a reflector at the bottom that would reflect back the light from the candles that were down below it. This one is a double pendulum weighted candle with lead and tin angels at the bottom of it. And then sometime in the 1890s through the 1930s, this was a popular type of, this one rotates. It's a ball and socket, and you can keep adjusting this as the tree limb droops or sweeps from one side to another. You can adjust it to keep that candle going upright. This one is again on a ball and socket, and it looks like a candle, except the white part that you're seeing here is actually cardboard. You can see here the top of a glass tube, and here's the wick. This is filled with oil, and it works kind of like a tiki torch. The wick goes down through there, and you light the top part, and it burns without any kind of dripping wax. These are sometimes called Victorian Christmas lights or tumbler lights. They've got a lot of different names. The ones that are on display here are mostly blown in a kiln and in a mold, so that we've got this waffle or diamond shape in the glass that has a wire bail around the top and a hanger. Early on, these begin to be manufactured in the late 1700s as a way of decorating lights on the tree. The earliest ones were designed to hold water with a thin layer of oil on top and a piece like this that went down into it and held the wick in place. One of the main problems with this was that this became really heavy on a tree branch. Also, the heat and the flame would be coming out right onto a tree branch that this was hanging from. So had a couple of disadvantages. One of the disadvantages was gotten rid of or taken care of with a heat shield like that one up above. The heat shields are kind of hard to find these days. I've put battery-operated lights in them, and they can be switched on and off without having to worry about candles. But by the time of the late 1800s, when these were still being used, they would have used candles in them, or votive candles, to do the same thing that we have here. Then we move into electric lighting in the early 1900s. This particular set is interesting in the sense that it has 3 separate festoons, all coming up to a porcelain junction box. And in the earliest days of electricity in homes, the first thing to be electrified was typically the main chandelier in the house. They didn't have wall plugs or receptacles in the floor like we have today, easily accessed. So instead of having a pronged in to the light cord, this has a screw-in light socket. So this would actually screw into a ceiling light, and then the tree would be underneath of it, and these 3 festoons, which all are decorated with Thomas Edison lights dated 1904, would flow down 3 sides of the tree. On the tree itself, we've decorated with figural light bulbs. These started to be produced in Germany in 1910. Some of the others that are made out of milk glass were produced in Japan in the 1950s. In the rear, we have a platform, early lighting with an early treetop on top of a chenille tree. And we have 4 lights on the bottom and 5 up here to create an unusual 9 instead of 8 in a circuit. This is an electrified treetop chime, and it would tie into your electrical by screwing in this into a receptacle in the light string that you had. This is a large nativity that we've set up in the rear parlor. Interesting facts about it. It's a 3rd century nativity. This particular piece is Italian, and it's from the 1800s. Most of the figures that you see in the nativity are anywhere from 1900 up until probably the 1970s. And most of the buildings are Fontani-type buildings, and they are from the 21st century. Several things to talk about on this is it's an interesting display, different than most people think of as a stable, a wooden stable with the Christ child inside of it, surrounded by animals and the shepherds and the wise men. This is the type that is found primarily in southern Italy, particularly pieces like this, like he said, from the 1800s. It represents an old prophecy that the Roman temple of peace would collapse and the Roman Empire would die when a virgin gave birth. So the Christian church picked that up with the idea of the virgin birth. And this is the ruins then of the Roman Empire with the beginning of the new world, with the birth of Christ being built on the old world. This white tree is filled with crystals. It's a reprise of a tree that we did for the Russian Christmas period, the idea of a snow-covered tree dripping with icicles and ice in the Siberian area of Russia. This corner is our World War II and World War I small exhibits. Over the years, we've done this a couple times on important anniversaries of those two wars. In the center is a tree from the time period of World War II. It is sparsely decorated compared to a lot of the other trees that you'll see in here. It only has about 35 lights on it. These are the ones that are in a series. When one goes out, everything in the string goes out. The decorations at this time period are unique. So generally when I talk about dating of Christmas decorations, I give you something like it's in the 1920s or the 1930s. Not very often are we able to date decorations to within a couple of years of when it was manufactured. These World War II ornaments are one of those exceptions. For example, this ornament is clear. There's no silvering in it. The silvering was taken out of the ornaments and was used in the Manhattan Project, which was the atomic bomb project, because silver is a much better conductor of electricity than copper. So that disappeared in 1941, 1942, 1943, all the way to 1945. But in the beginning, 1942, 1943, the metal caps were still on the top, and the small little ring-like holder that held the hanger in it were still on it. By the time of 1944, 1945, these cardboard caps appear. And you might think, well, that was just a small piece of metal. But when there are millions of these being produced, all that metal added up. On the mantel in the fireplace, we have a Santa on a sleigh. Santa is like these. They were typically called by collectors egg carton. They're American made. They have the same roughness of egg cartons up this time, made out of a rough paper mache material. They date from the 30s, 40s into the 50s. So they fit into our concept of the World War II time period. Inside the mantel, or the fireplace rather, is a Santa blow mold, which goes back to our fantastic plastic time period. We have a snowman, Santa Claus, and a blow mold Christmas tree. On top, we have this banner, Merry Christmas. Looks like it's maybe designed to be cut from logs or something like that. Again, this was a popular piece in the 40s and the 50s. The ornaments that are on the two small trees are all figural ornaments. Mostly they are German, and mostly they are made anywhere from 1990 and into the 2000s. This piece is a German paper mache Santa, and he is a candy container. The bottom will slide out, and you could put small presents or candy on the inside of it. The light ups at the end are night lights. They're both the same piece, the same Santa. They are American made, probably from the 50s. I believe that they are biking glass time period. And originally they would have had candles in them, but I have some fairy lights in it that light up and run on batteries. This is our giving tree of hope. Christmas time can be a hard time for many families in terms of food and shelter. So in conjunction with the Fairfield County Hunger Alliance and the Decorative Arts Center of Ohio, Jeanne and I have set up just this simple white tree with changing lights. And what we've done is anytime someone brings in a food item here to the Decorative Arts Center for the Hunger Alliance, they can get one of these ornaments that we had down at the front desk to place on the tree. Not only food, but any kind of a donation monetarily also to the Hunger Alliance can help you decorate this tree. What we're hoping is that by the end of the Christmas season that we have fully decorated this tree, maybe more than once. We're in the front parlor of the Decorative Arts Center, and this patriotic tree is a salute to one of the years when we did the Ohio presidents. We put up a tree decorated in the period style of each of the 8 Ohio presidents. It went in time period from 1840s up to the 1930s. Then on this table, we have several trees that originally would have been much bigger when we did them on 8-foot, 9-foot, 10-foot trees, but we've consolidated them down to much smaller ones so that we could give a salute to that time period and those decorations. This tree, and this tree are all Russian decorations. They came from 2020 when we were doing a Russian Christmas. The aluminum tree itself is actually a Russian aluminum tree, and it dates from the same time period, 1960s, as our American trees, but it is much more sparse in its use of materials, and the branches, instead of being wrapped in a spiral, have just a small, spiky, almost feather-like decorations on it. The decorations on this tree, a lot of them come from fairy tales, and one particular fairy tale that was very popular in Germany, and a lot of pieces were made, were ones that were fruits and vegetables and the war between those two classes of people. The vegetables were those things that were grown in the ground, and the fruits were the ones that were in the tops of the trees. And it was a clash between two classes, which was ultimately the message that the communists wanted to portray to children and adults at Christmas time. Another decoration is this one and this Viking boat down here. The word for Russia comes from Rus, which was a Norse, the Nordic people, the Vikings, came into Russia and did a lot of settlement across the northern part, and they were called the Rus Vikings and gave its name to Russia. The next one in line is figural glass ornaments, primarily made in Germany, anywhere from the late 1800s through the 1930s. The next one in line that we have is pushpin trees, jeweled ornaments, faux Fabergé. They go by a lot of names. They started out in the 1950s and became very popular in the 60s and then again in the 70s. What they generally have in common is they have a styrofoam ball and then they're covered with beads, sequins, faux gems. One in particular that's interesting is this one has real gems cut into it. And another one up here that is definitely a homemade one, not made in a kit like many of the others. It has pieces of grandma's broken jewelry on it. In this section of the front parlor of the Decorative Arts Center, we have what I've called the family tree, because it's basically my family. We put this up several years ago when we did homemade, handmade, artist-made Christmas, and the docents said that it was a big hit, so we have put it up again. This is decorated from the 70s, 80s, and 90s in style. That is the time period of me getting married, the first ornaments that I ever made and had, and some that my wife made. And it's also the time period when my children grow up. And so we have a lot of their pictures and chains that they made in kindergarten and preschool, baby's first Christmas, you know, a lot of those family things that a lot of you have on your trees also. Treetop is one that was on my grandmother and grandfather's tree for many years. It is like most families' trees. It's a tree of memories of our family and our past. And when we look at it, all of those come back to us. On the top of the mantel, following that same idea, we have letters to Santa Claus that my children wrote through the years. They laid these out on the hearth in the house and left cookies and milk out. In the morning, the list was gone, the milk was drank, and the cookies were eaten, and the toys, not everything on the list, but many of the toys that they had on the list then appeared under the tree. This is a salute to my parents. This Christmas, 2005, will be the first Christmas without them. This is a picture of my mother and my father. My father was 98. My mother was 95. They died within a week of each other this spring. So this is a salute to my father, who worked as an archaeological photographer in Egypt for 30 years. He did a lot of work in the for the Egyptian government and many of the universities in their digs. And these decorations are all Egyptian. Some of them I collected, some of them my dad collected. And they were made by Polonaise, which is a Polish company. Many of the ornaments over here that says, you know, world's best teacher, you know, gifts, little knickknacks that are for teachers, were for my mother, who for many years was a fourth grade teacher. So we have a lot of her decorations right here on the tree. One other salute to the family is in the very center, a picture of my grandfather and me, and I'm probably a year and a half or 2 years old at that point in time. And I think I got my love for Christmas and Christmas decorating from my grandfather. So on display here, we have 4 aluminum trees. They started in the late 1950s and were popular through most of the 60s. They really changed the way that we decorated trees. These are very sparse, very, very sleek, very modern in their concept. And that's exactly what they were trying to portray at that point in time, that we were leaving that old world, that World War II time period behind and the 1950s behind, and we're moving into a postmodern era. This tree is a 1950s tree, and in some ways we've moved backwards in time. And I'd like for you to think back at the tree that was World War II, how sparse it was in terms of its decorations and its lights, and how rich this is in comparison to it, and only a few years difference. That was the frugality of the war and the wartime time period. This is a celebration then of the prosperity that occurred in the United States in the 1950s. We have a lot of innovation that takes place. Bubble lights, 1949, all through the 50s, were the lights to have. We have lights that are fluorescent instead of ones with filaments in them. We have lights like this that are ice ball lights that are all American made. The typical things of this tree is no longer European focused or around the world. Most of these decorations are all American. This is when the Americas are moving forward into, you know, a world leadership position. So on the 2 couches here in the front parlor, we're looking back at our homemade, handmade storybook Christmas time period. Coming down this side of the couch, we have the Christmas story, and we have the infamous pink bunny suit from there. We have some records from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s that we are playing over here every once in a while. And we have a Charlie Brown Christmas book. We have the Polar Express Christmas book. And we have a first edition of How the Grinch Stole Christmas and a Grinch stocking. On this side, again, something very similar, a Bing Crosby record, Firestone records from the 60s, and several pop-up books that were very popular in the 1950s into the 60s, one of which I want to show you more carefully. This is one of these activity pop-up books from the 1950s. This particular one is called Santa's Toonie Toy, And instead of pages with candy and activities and balloons and things like that, this one actually had a xylophone on the inside with a book of music that the child could sit and play Christmas tunes for the family. This is the xylophone. It's in the Santa's Toonie toy, and these are the ways that the children can play. They have numbers on them, and the numbers on the xylophone match up, and they can actually play. This particular one is Jingle Bells. So this display is about items that were made in the Erzgebirge or mountains region of Germany. This is a wooden pyramid, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stages high. The lit candles create heat, which turns this heat vane, which in turn moves the pieces around. This dates from the late 1920s, early 1930s, and it tells the story of Christmas. This is the wise men traveling and Roman soldiers. This one is the Annunciation by an angel to the shepherds in the field. This is the adoration of the Magi and the actual nativity with Christ in the manger. This one is kind of the end of the nativity story in the sense that this is the flight to Egypt. And we have Mary holding the child Jesus on a donkey and an angel leading her and Joseph out of Bethlehem into Egypt. And the region in Germany where these were made was also a big hunting that was part of their culture. So in many of these nativity displays, there's also a hunting display. So we have a man out hunting deer on that one. This is, again, a mixture. We have some newer Erzgebirge pieces, very popular pieces starting in the 1700s. But at the end of World War II, the Erzgebirge region ended up in eastern Germany, and a lot of their traditional woodworking toys and things like that were kind of frowned on by the Russian officials, and it kind of really scaled back because it didn't have the world market anymore. Then after the reunification of Germany, many of the old artists and families then started making items again, and we can find some today in upscale boutiques that are imported from the Erzgebirge region. This tree, all decorated with Santas, is a reprise of the first 2 years of decorating here at the Decorative Arts Center of Ohio. In the front hallway, which you saw a little while ago with a big wreath of Santa, the first trees that we put up were 10 feet tall and decorated only with glass Santa Clauses. And after those first 2 years, then we did the whole upstairs with a history of the decorated Christmas tree. So this is a kind of a remembrance of those ornaments and those trees, how we all got started here. We're in the rising room now, and this is a large Victorian tree. We've done this several times over the years. Each time it changes a little bit in the way it's decorated and things like that. But it's a good example of a tree from anywhere from the 1870s up to about 1910. Christmas trees didn't look like this in the Victorian time period. First of all, they weren't sheared and this nice pyramidal even shape. Over on the couch, I have a display of how several of the Victorian trees really looked. They were not as tall as this. They were often tabletops or only 5 foot tall. Some of them have candle lighting on them. They show the toys of children. We also have a picture over here of the house right next door to the Decorative Arts Center, taken in 1915, of children and their Christmas tree that would have been that late Victorian time period. These 2 pieces down here are of particular interest to Jeanne and I. They're copies of old Victorian dolls that have the superimposed face of me and Jeannie on them. They were made by Marcia Rose, who was an early volunteer here at the Decorative Arts Center. And she was also a collector of antique Christmas decorations. And in one of my early books, I photographed ornaments from her collection and her family's collection. And she introduced us to Tom Laporte, one of the early directors, and said, this guy can do Christmas stuff for us. And so, as I mentioned earlier, in the front hallway, we put up a 10-foot tree and decorated it all with Santas. And we did that for 2 years. And that next year, Tom said, we're thinking of doing the whole upstairs, kind of a history of Christmas decorations and things like that. Can you do that? And we said, sure. And so we've been decorating here ever since, thanks to Marcia's introduction to the Decorative Arts Center to us and us to them. This is the mantelpiece in the rising room. It's decorated with chromolithographic figures from the 1880s, 1890s. This is a perfect way of displaying these particular pieces because it is at eye level. And eye level, you look at this and it looks very three-dimensional, multi-layer, three-dimensional. But in fact, these pieces are all flat, okay? They're chromolithographed in their color. They're on a light cardboard that has been slightly embossed. And the layering effect is simply by the layers of these pieces that we go from here all the way back to the mirror. There's probably about 100 different pieces here. These are raised up on platforms, and we have other pieces in that disguise the platforms. But this is an ideal place to do this particular display. We've done it about 3 times over the years here. If you put it lower on a table and you're looking down, you miss that three-dimensional effect. If it's placed any higher, you're looking up at it, you miss the three-dimensional effect. But this mantel is just basically perfect at eye level to create that wonderful effect with these antique pieces. This is a piece, Merry Christmas piece, made by Raphael Tuck. And I believe on the back of this it says that he was the stationer to Queen Victoria. And it dates from the same basic time period as the pieces that are up here. Underneath we have a cast iron Santa and sled, probably somewhere between 1900 and the 1920s, and some early candelabras, again, 20s, 30s, into the early 40s, and a nice snowsuit for a boy or a girl, and the rubber boots that would have gone with it. On the desk in the rising room, we have a display of Christmas cards and letters that would date anywhere from the 1840s up until the 1970s. This is one of our last ones, 1970s type of time period. This is one of our earliest ones, 1850s. And it's interesting in the sense that we've got a Happy Christmas information, Happy New Year, things like that. But the girl is not in a winter outfit. There's nothing in that scene or that graphic that would indicate that it's a Christmas card other than the greeting that's on it. These were all in the 1850s and the early 1860s were about that size, which was the size of a calling card. When you walk into to visit someone in a nice Victorian house, generally in the entryway there was a table of some kind, maybe a round one, maybe a marble top one like we see out here in the hallway. And so these small cards, the size of a calling card, those would be left on the table, just like a calling card would be in the time period. But they were unusual enough. These were typically hand-delivered, not sent through the mail. And they were unusual enough that families had some of these, or purchased generally stationery stores, a little box that these could actually be dropped into. And then when visitors came or you were interested, you could pull it out and you could show the cards that you had been given over Christmas time. Again, not mailed, but typically hand-delivered. And then the same process continues into the 1870s, 1880s, and 1890s. And this looks like a book, but indeed it is a box. And on the front of it, it says Christmas cards. So again, this was a place for you to put some of the larger pieces that might come, like that size, into safe storage and have it all in one spot. Today, well, not so much today, but in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, we would drape them across our fireplace and string them around the room or put them on tables. It's a way of displaying the beautiful cards that we got. This was just simply the Victorian way of doing it. One of the things, too, that we still do today is the Christmas letter. Lots of families keep in touch with each other, especially at Christmas time. This is what's happened to the family. You know, John's new job, you know, Sue doing these things, or new job for her. They were just a Christmas letter. This is a Christmas letter done on a formalized sheet of paper that you would buy at a stationer's shop. It's actually German. The letter is written in German. Weihnachts, it says that it's a Christmas letter. And it's inside of a glass frame to protect it. But you can see the last page. This would actually open up. So this actually has 3 pages of handwritten. This is what's happening to our family at Christmas time. And this is the last page. And it's dated 1888. And down here it tells who the family is that's sent it. This is another interesting card, a gimmick type card or trick type card, sometimes they're called. This is one from about the 1880s, 1890s. Nice frame with flowers on it. And we see in the center a white angel. Looks kind of plain and a little uninteresting, but it's a hold to the light card. Sometimes on these, they actually set on them someplace, hold me to the light. So when I hold this to the light that I have back here, we have a whole different picture of an angel. This one is another one from about the 1870s to the early 1880s. Looks like a regular Christmas card. You've got a greetings on the back. 1876 is the handwriting on the back. And the interesting thing about this is, again, it's one of those what we call a trick card or a mechanical card, because the front will flip down and you actually have a 3-dimensional image of the little town of Bethlehem. This is a wonderful handmade Christmas decoration. The back of this says that this card was made by Helen, age 9, for her mother. So Helen has done some embroidery up here, wishing you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my soul. This is it's a kind of a riddle card, a picture card, one with the embroidery on it, you know, kind of all in one. Just a very remarkable card. Thank you for joining us at the Decorative Arts Center of Ohio here in Lancaster, Ohio, for our 25th celebration, our silver anniversary of decorating here. We've decorated other museums throughout the years and other locations in and out of the state of Ohio. But this particular museum has become like a family to Jeanne and I. We know the staff. We've worked with them. We joke with them. They're very patient with our time that we come in and decorate, and always very happy to see us. And we will start the planning for next year in about a month. As we start taking this display down, we will start planning for next year. And so working with this, like I say, it's basically working with family, and to a large extent, it's become a second home to us at Christmas time. I hope that you have the opportunity to this year maybe come see it in person. It's always much better in person than these videos, but if you're farther away, the video is the next best thing. And we wish all of you and yours a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.